India has done very well by reducing malaria to the extent of 90% since 2015. And if you look at, India is supposed to end or eliminate malaria by 2027 and then sustain it for 3 years, so by 2030. If you look today, India is definitely poised for elimination if it continues with the strategies that are there. And definitely it will need changes in the strategy because it will mean from control to elimination. When I say control to elimination, I mean the focus will shift from reducing malaria, which is already reduced, is sustaining malaria so that it does not, and also detecting outbreaks early and taking immediate preventive measures for any outbreaks. Also, it would need increasing the surveillance in the country to detect any rise, even small rise in a, let's say not a district, but we may say like in a village which was not reporting malaria, and suddenly there are cases reported. The detection has to be very fast and to be real time, and all measures need to be taken. The first thing is, if the person has got fever, immediately should be tested, and the test can be done by means what we call as rapid diagnostic test, which gives results by strip test within 15 minutes or even by microscopy. And then if found positive, based on the parasite which is present in the blood, the treatment is given immediately. This is what we call as early detection and treatment. Strategy number 2 looks into the control of the vectors. When we say vectors, we mean the mosquitoes which are transmitting the malaria needs to be taken care. The strategy for them is conventional was by means of indoor residual spray, which was being done by means of DDT and synthetic pyrethroid, which is sprayed inside the houses. In the recent years, India has introduced what we call the long-lasting insecticide nets across the country, which are given free of cost in all endemic areas where the malaria is. Now, these insecticide nets contain a chemical on them, and once given, it can be used for 3 years. There are other strategies which include, for example, the surveillance. Surveillance means detecting the fever cases, immediately giving them treatment, and also following up, looking into if there are, how this person got malaria and are there any other malaria cases in that area. And based on that, take actions that other people don't get malaria also. In India, basically we are dealing with 2 types of malaria. One is the Plasmodium vivax and the other is Plasmodium falciparum. The Plasmodium vivax, both are transmitted by Anopheles bite of female Anopheles mosquitoes. The vivax malaria mainly affects the liver. That is the main part which is affected, because in vivax, the malaria parasite does remain dormant in spite of the treatment or the incomplete treatment. It can remain dormant in the liver and can again come after 2-3 years, can again infect the person. So that is the main part affected in vivax is the liver. Definitely the transmission happens through the red blood cells which are affected. In case of falciparum, which we call as a fulminant malaria or malaria which can cause death. Now the falciparum malaria, if not treated immediately, can cause death. And the areas that are mainly affected in this is basically all multiple organs are involved. And these are because the parasites which is there in the RBCs, there is sequestration of RBCs which goes through the small arteries, like they may affect the brain, they may affect the kidneys. So they may be mainly affected. And what happens is, then we get problems, what we may call as cerebral malaria, or we may call as renal malaria, So it can infect the whole body and definitely cause death because of involvement of the multiple organs in the body. There has been a decline in malaria cases by nearly 90% if you compare with 2014-15 data. So there has been a decline, and this decline is equally important because it is affecting both the parasite species, the vivax and the flexible. The challenge is now that this needs to be sustained. When I sustain, that means one has to look into which areas are still reporting malaria. Now, it may not be as a state level as a whole, it may be district level or it may be below district level. So one has to find those areas which are reporting the consistent, or what we say, consistent malaria cases are coming from them. Now, those areas have to be tackled. That is one aspect. It is very important that the guidelines from the center, which are drafted by the National Center for Vector-Borne Disease Control, that is there in Delhi, are sent to the states, and states are trained into these aspects of implementing. That means the capacity building needs to take place all across the country so that they can implement all this. This is very important. The issue is, if you look at, in India, the malaria is not reported from the higher reaches. It's mainly the cases in the peninsular India and the northeastern states. Now, during winters, definitely the malaria goes down. But with the change in the climatic factors, the temperatures rising up, especially in the foothills and hills area, there can be possibility of malaria coming in these areas. That's one. Number two is, because of increase in temperature and decreasing of the winter time, there can be transmission which used to occur, so-called seasonal transmission, can become a perennial. When I say perennial, I mean the transmission can become all year round. Number two, it will mean lot of financial resources as of now concentrating on the high malarious areas, and also looking if the newer areas comes, they will need lot of resources to tackle these areas also. Number four is definitely the climatic factors, like we normally think, will lead to irregular rainfalls, floodings, movement of population, migration from one area to another, and all these lead to increase in malaria. Sanitation is very important in the sense is, if the sanitation is proper, when we say the disposal of the wastewater is good, then possible breeding of mosquitoes will not occur. That's one aspect. Coupled with this also is the personal hygiene. That means when we're looking at living in high endemic areas, the personal hygiene would need to take prevention, personal individual preventions for malaria. For example, it is must that one can use full sleeve shirts, protect herself or himself from mosquito bites. They are equally important. When we talk about sanitation, we have been talking about so-called the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which does aim at all these aspects. The personal hygiene and sanitation will be very important for malaria elimination.